Aloha and welcome everybody to our new episode here on Surf Your Energy Wave of our Soul Talks. I'm so happy and looking forward to my interview guest today on this specific Soul Talk. We have the wonderful Daphne Wells, who is going to talk to us about a certain period of time in our lives, but please stay with us because even if you might not fit into that period of life right now, we're going to talk about things that go through all our stages. So Daphne helps midlife women feel safe, solid, and secure to share their magic with the world and make more money with ease and flow. As your purpose and spiritual confidence alchemist, Daphne delivers insanely powerful insights that give you radical permission show up in your power and fulfill your purpose in the world. Through her life-changing coaching, inner circles, energy readings and forecasts, her book Decide, Choose Your Own Path, she's here to shake up your approach to business and life. When she's not inspiring women around the globe to make more money in record time, you'll find Daphne creating magic with fabric and threads, getting her hands dirty, growing what she eats, or frolicking in the waves. I love that so much. Hello, Daphne. It's so great to have you here. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, May. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And we just heard a little bit about what you do, but maybe in your own words, what does it look like? What do you do right now?
What do I do right now? So women come to me generally when they are at a stage of their lives where they're like, I've learned all this stuff, I've grown, I've done all this stuff. Who am I now? And what am I doing moving forward? Because they're feeling that something needs to change.
I think
And so I help them through numerology, sharing their energy readings with them, their energetic DNA with them. We have a physical DNA, we also have an energetic one, and really helping them make those choices and decisions in a way that are aligned for them to move forward so they actually can create their own life rather than living a life somebody else prescribed for us, which is what we often realize we've been doing.
I love that so much, and there's so many women specifically, but I mean, I think it's a general because we talk about the midlife crisis for men, right? So I think it's when you start to rethink what have you done so far, and as young ones, I think we always follow whoever whoever were our parents or the closest people or the teachers, then the school that we come out of school and we just want to be accepted in this community and we try to find ourselves within that, but still we're like you said, the shoulds, what we should do and what everybody else wants us to do, and then suddenly we end up at 30, we were talking about it, right? 39, 40, maybe 50, or shortly before we're going into retirement, and you're going like, what have I done with my life, right?
And what am I going to do next? Because there's always that what next. And I think that concept of retiring, there still is this, well, if I'm not going to go work for a boss anymore, what am I going to do? Because am I really going to sit and twiddle my thumbs?
Yeah.
There's still always that what next, right? And you mentioned how society, we kind of learn from our parents, and science, research has shown that children, especially up to the age of 7, are sponges. We absorb and we believe anything we hear, anything we see, anything we feel. And we believe that that's true, and it shapes who we become, even though we come into the world with our physical DNA, we also have an energetic DNA. And so we come in as this little baby, and it's our energetic DNA that is quieted and shut down, and because of that sponge aspect, where we're we can say conditioned, we can say told who to be, we can say habituated. We're kind of like molded into what society wants us to be.
Yeah, and then we wake up one day and are like, who am I in this whole thing, right?
And we rediscover aspects of us. Like as a child, I remember hearing, seeing, sensing messages. And whenever I shared them, I was pretty much shut down. And so I shut down my intuition and kind of didn't want to hear those things because of the way it was received when I shared them, right? And so you come to this point as an adult where there's got to be more to life. Well, I did personally come to this point where it's got to be more to life than all this superficial stuff, than doing what I'm meant to be doing, what society says I'm meant to be doing, you know, buying all the things, doing all the things, you know. There's more to life than that. And I went searching for it.
And that search is so beautiful, right?
Isn't it? Isn't it? And so, you know, my intuition, as I say, was shut down. And in the latter probably decade of my life, my intuition guides me every step of the way. You know, intuition, soul, inner spirit, higher self, however we want to term that, right? It is that spirit of the universe that's in each of us.
And that wants to guide us. That's one of the things that I was learning on my path. That the spirit guide, I like to call them the spirit guides, or like you said, the higher self, the universe that is guiding us, that is talking to us through our intuition.
Yes.
They're just waiting for us to go and say, hey, I need help with this, or I'd like to have your support with this. But as long as we don't tell them that, as long as for me, it's setting the intention that we'd like help with something, or that we want to have a solution for whatever challenge or for whatever problem. As long as we don't express that intention, they're going to be standing there like this, waiting for us to go like, okay, so like, okay, I'm
That's
going to
right.
watch out for the accidents, but like, am I just waiting here for you, or what? That's how it feels.
Must be so frustrating for them, mustn't it? And the other aspect to that, May, too, is they're there wanting to help us. Like the lots of the little things that happen in life. I notice when I reflect on my own life that, you know, the same lessons the universe was trying to teach my spirit, my higher self was trying to teach me these lessons along the way. And tried so many times and I wasn't ready. And then all of a sudden it's just like slam dunk, you're going to get this now, right? And part of that, what I've realized for myself is, and for others, is that are we open to receive? Are we open and willing and ready to accept and receive and honor who we are? Or are we content with who we've been told to be?
I love that so much. I love that question so much. I had my own midlife, I'm going to call it midlife crisis at 33.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember back then, because for me, I really went into depression. Like you said, if you don't follow something, the universe at one point is going to, slam the door and just, and in my case, it was a full blown depression, but not because of overwhelm. It was more of, not knowing my purpose, my purpose in life, or not having a purposeful job. And it was interesting because on that journey, I discovered that I was completely programmed to the outside world, which is for empaths it's actually one of the signs that could happen to empaths, is that we get completely programmed to everyone else and don't really have a feeling for who we are ourselves. And then I remember going like, so I remember that the biggest fear that came up back then I was in therapy, and the biggest fear that came up was that I was afraid of being myself.
Mm.
But the thing was that I didn't even know who myself was.
Yes.
Right? So I had to go into that journey of finding out who is me? Who is the essence of me? Like, who do I want to be?
Who is me? Who is me? Because when we're told who to be from a young child, and we want to, as a human being, we want to belong. We want to, and we interpret that as fitting in and belonging to everybody else, belonging to society, if you will, fitting in. And what happens is that we change parts of ourselves in order to do that. We deny, we shut down pieces of ourselves. What I've learned is that I can only belong somewhere when I belong with me. That belonging is an internal thing. And when I fit with me, it really doesn't matter whether I fit in that group or that gang, or you know what I mean? Like, I am complete in and of myself, but not meaning I don't want relationships, I don't want friendships. It means I come as a complete whole being, and any relationships, and relationships as in friendships, as in, clients, as in anything, any kind of relationship that we have with another person, is about us coming as a whole self, and that person coming as a whole self, and making something better when we come together.
I love that so much. That connection. I also love that the moment you start being yourself more, you attract similar people to yourself more. So it's not, and this is it's a little bit paradox, because on one hand we want to change into the person who we truly are, but we're afraid of doing that because we're afraid that the people surrounding us are not going to like us. But the moment we start doing it, we're going to start attracting more of our true tribe, and to be more ourselves, to be where we can be ourselves. And
Yeah.
I'd like to put that in because I think I actually just shared it in another episode, but I still want to put it in because I feel that fits in. I remember in the beginning of my business life, yes, because that was part of me becoming me, um,
Mhm.
becoming solopreneur. And I remember having a really bad review, or not review, but I was just getting started, having my first YouTube video and guided meditation on YouTube. This is like a couple of years ago. And then a friend, and not a friend, but someone I know from like a coworker that knew about me going into that niche, she
Mhm.
listened to it and she gave me a really bad review. She said, like, your voice doesn't work and you can't do this and you're always going and you need to read your text and everything. And it was really crushing because it was exactly 7 days before I would start my first free webinar that I was giving. And I remember that the day of that like it really, like 7 days going, typical overthinker, going through the whole motions of, you know, second guessing everything about that. I remember on the day of my webinar, I went to visit a friend and I told her about it. And she said, dude, you don't want to, like, just, you don't want to attract clients that don't like you for who you are. You just want to have people that like your voice, because there's so many guided meditations out there, but you want to have the ones that really like your voice and who you are and how you transmit that. So that's how you're going to go into your webinar. Reminding yourself that you're going to attract the ones that are okay with who you are, with your energy.
Mhm.
And I wanted to share that because I feel that that fits into everything in our lives, especially when it comes to that, because we're so afraid of changing into who we truly are that we forget that, hey, once I go and be myself, I mean, the huge thing is I am going to be healed, and be fine with myself. But on top of that, I'm going to be attracting the right people into my life.
Yeah. And that person who gave you that bad review, she's not one of your clients. She's not someone who's going to help you grow and transform and expand who you are. And she's not someone you want to spend a lot of time with. And the more visible we become, the more we step into ourselves, the more important that it is that we have boundaries that honor us, so that we're not denying pieces of ourselves to keep people like that woman happy. And that's where boundaries of what you will and won't accept are really important, especially for empaths, especially for people who feel those emotions and the energies of other people. There's a discerning of, is that mine or is that theirs? Can I feel it and sense it without having to hold on to it? It's like being willing to be the mirror for them and not be that sponge that we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
It is about having those boundaries up. And a coach of mine once said to me, when I got my first hater, she's like, badge of honor, Daphne, it shows you're getting more visible. Because the reality is that if you took, now I've heard this statistic and I can't remember where it came from, but if you took 100 people, you'd find that, there'd be 2 or 3 of them who would absolutely hate you. And you'd find there'd be about 10 of them who didn't really like you. And you'd find there'd be another 20 or 30 who were pretty ho-hum, and then you'd get up to the top and there'd be, 1 or 2 who absolutely adored you and would, keep working with you forever and a day and take up any offer you put out there and just be your loudest cheerleader. So the more visible we become, the more which we do in business as we grow, and also personally, when you become who you are rather than who society told you to be, those people are actually going to pop up and do that, not necessarily on YouTube, because you may not be someone who has a YouTube video as May did. It may be just someone who does something really scathing in real life, and I've had this happen to me, and I've learned to just kind of be like, okay, I'm happy to be your mirror. Because the reality is that those people are sensing that you've changed, and that kind of, it's almost like a challenge to them, almost like a red flag to a bull. Well, she's changing and growing. Are you going to? And so by criticizing you, May, that woman wasn't having to look at whether she was willing to do anything different in her life.
Exactly. And also for me, it was teaching me what wanted to be healed within myself, because it was that mirror for myself too,
Yes.
to see that I still was second guessing myself. So thank you, thank you to her for doing that, because in the end, because I had my, or the spirit guides or the universe sent me that friend that actually gave me the right words right before my first moment of going live, right?
Yeah.
And I think
and we're open to receive those gifts, and those messages always come along, like that lady showing you where you needed to be more, to not second guess your decisions.
exactly.
Because decisions are choices we make for now. We make a choice and then we decide we've made a commitment. That's how we're stepping forward, not set in concrete. You can make another one, right?
Yes.
It's that commitment to take that step that actually changes the energy, right?
I love that, because that's what I was gonna say, is this deciding, allowing this to happen, like you said earlier, you know, receiving the information, receiving the input, and allowing yourself to be more conscious with yourself, right? I
Yes.
love that. I love that you that what. Sorry, my phone keeps going off. Um, one of the things that brought my attention right now when I was just reading your bio, um, was that you help women, you know, come create their own new businesses as well. How does that, like, how do you get to that part? Because I would think, you know, it's like you're in your midlife. Of course, nowadays you have a lot of life still going, because I mean, we get a lot older than before. But how do you help them, um, or how do you see that part of women getting the strength to restart something new at that point in age?
Oftentimes we have that strength as women at that age because by then our children are becoming more independent. We are, you know, we've gone through that stage of doing all the right things in life, and then it's, well, what's next? And so when women come to me with that, we look really intensely at, well, what is your purpose? And numerology gives us the energy of that. I love the science of numerology and the math, and that it also, and that, you know, the fact that wisdom, intuition speaks through that, right? And so in amongst that, we can read the energy of their life purpose. And in amongst that is their magical gifts for the world. Magic, when I use it, has a K on it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I'm not pulling cards out of my sleeves. I'm not pulling a dove out of my ear or whatever. It's the spirit of the universe flowing through us, right? So what are your magical gifts that you were given at birth, that you've evolved and learned lessons to hone through life? And now are you willing to share those? And as women, when I get to that point in working with them, most of them become aware that they've been doing that for free for quite some time. Now, in numerology, I work with two schools of numerology. I work with the Pythagorean numerology, which gives you a birth code, which is your personality. It's how the lens that you view the world through. And also Egyptian Book of Life numerology, in which you have a birth card. And in that birth card, from the regular playing deck of cards, is your purpose, your soul's purpose in this journey through life. Now, my way of communicating that to people is your soul was wherever it is before you incarnate, and that job description was put up on the board, and you said, yep, I'll go do that. And there comes a point in midlife where you realize that all of the challenges, the growth edges, the lessons you've learned along the way have been honing and shaping that. And now, when you are ready, and we work together to put those things that you've been giving away for free into a business, you can help more people and really fulfill your purpose. And so when women really fall in love with their purpose, that, well, obviously they want to do more of that, right? So when we turn that into a business, it means they are helping more people. So they're doing more of what they're here in this lifetime to do. And they also don't have to go and work the job that, as you said before, isn't necessarily always satisfying, right? So it becomes not an effort. It happens with ease and flow once everything is aligned and it all falls into place.
I love that. I love that part specifically, because that's also something that almost goes for everything, whatever we start doing in our lives. There's this flow of things, right? So it's where it just happens, you know, it happens easily. And this is, I find this so interesting for us to tap into that. That's one of the reasons why my podcast is called Surf Your Energy Wave, why my program is called Serve Your Energy Wave, because I feel that when we tap into our own flow, we know if our wave is just coming or if it's at the moment of retreating, to gain strength to come back, as a full wave. Because it's about that, listening to yourself and what needs to be done right now. And once we align with that, everything flows by itself and it's not pushed, and it's not, because sometimes I feel, especially when it comes to business, especially because I've been through a couple of business schools, and a lot of things are, in this hustle mode, and you have to push and you have to do and you have to do. And I feel that especially for us sensitive people in general, if it's because I'm in my midlife, can I call it the midlife crisis? If I'm finding myself, or if I'm at that brink, finding my purpose, if I get into that energy of you have to hustle, it's like, that's not the purpose of life, right? The purpose of life is to experience myself and to flow with it.
Whenever you feel like you're hustling, have to hustle, or like it's hard work being in business, you're out of alignment.
Yeah.
You're doing it someone else's way. You're trying to fit into a box that isn't you. And this is where I differ from a lot of business coaches, if you want to put that hat on me as one of my labels, because I don't have a prescribed way. We intuitively figure out the way for you to be in business, how to build that, how to structure it, how to keep it going in a way that fits in with you and your energy and your lifestyle. And then it does. I love that analogy of the waves, because the other thing, waves are consistent. They never stop. They differ depending on the season, depending on the moon, depending on the weather, depending on lots of things. They differ in their intensity, they differ in their strength. They never stop, and nothing can stop them. The sea has a strength that very little else can withstand. So I love that analogy. I love that you call your podcast that.
Yeah, that's why I love that part. And it's like you said, it's this being consistent with yourself. It's not about being consistent with whatever's out there. Like, even like, I think I even explained it in my introduction here with the podcast. So in case you didn't hear it, for my audience, you're hearing it here. I love being consistent with what I do, but I have to be consistent with myself. And sometimes I might have a phase where a podcast episode is not going to come out, or because I do a lot of things myself. It might happen that in 1 week I'm not going to be able to bring it out on that day, on that time. That's why, I have a full day of, on Mondays we're going to have this topic, on Wednesdays this, on Fridays this, but I don't want to have a timestamp on it. And maybe there's going to be a moment where I might have other things happening because my wave is retreating somewhere else. So there might be an episode that might not come out on that day, but it will come out at some point. So that is a promise. So I'm consistent with my own energy. And I think that's one of the things that I understand is what you're teaching, to follow that intuition that lies within you. How do you do that because I remember for myself and also for my clients as well, one of the things is in the beginning, when I talk to, listen to your intuition, listen to that inner voice that you have. And there's so much doubt in it. I remember myself back then when I was starting off, how often I doubted that inner voice and did something else because, the shoulds were telling me what I should do. And so I didn't listen to that inner voice and was doing things in a way that I'm not, my inner voice wasn't.
It worked out when you did that, did it?
No, never.
I've been there too. And so that's where numerology came into my world. And I'm so grateful it did, because when I first received my first numerology reading, it told me I was highly intuitive. I was like, wow. Thanks, Mum. Thanks, Dad. And I know they did it with love. Like they weren't trying to be cruel, right? It was just weird to them, I guess, some of the things I was sharing. And even the ones I can remember would have seemed weird to my parents way back then, right? And yet, so once I knew you are deeply intuitive, Daphne, you are here in the world with big work to do. That was a message I heard audibly as a child and was shut down. Oh, no, you'll just be an ordinary mother and housewife. And, you know, back in small town New Zealand in the era I grew up in, right? That was kind of the message. And so once I knew that, once I received that reading, because it is based only on your date of birth, so it's unlike any other personality test, if you like, that is situationally based, depending on how you answer the questions. Numerology is calculated from your date of birth and intuited by the reader. So there's no second guessing that. You accept it, or you look at yourself, as I had to, and heal some things to accept pieces of me that I really didn't like, and realize that because energy exists in a continuum, I could choose how I showed up in it. And it showed me potential for the pieces of my life I wasn't happy with at that stage. And what I felt that really did for me was give me a safe sandbox to be me in, to play with my intuition, to run. When I doubted what my intuition said, was it aligned with that numerology reading, like back in the really early days of playing with it and really trusting it, learning to trust it again. And if it was, I went with it. If it wasn't, I questioned it. You know, what's going on here, Spirit? Is this really right? You know, like, you know, gave me that safe sandbox. And I've watched my clients do that too. You know, share the reading with them. In some stages, they just go, oh, it's like all of a sudden they realize that that is who they are. So there's a huge acceptance in that. And I shared my sandbox analogy with a lady the other day, and she's like, no, I have a whole sports field. I'm like, what on you?
I like that picture of the whole sports field, because it gives you more space, right, to move around.
It does. I mean, and you can choose how big. I always say, well, you can choose how big your sandbox is. You can keep expanding it, so it does become a sports field or a sports stadium or a whatever, right? It's just, you know, you think of a sandbox and a child playing in one, you know, and it is that safe place, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing, to find that within yourself, that safe space to test yourself out, because that's how you, because we were talking earlier about you know, finding out who you, because having that question, you know, being afraid of not you know, showing yourself the way you are, but at the same time not even knowing who you are. But once you start creating this play field, whatever, you know, playground is the right name, you know, that playground for yourself, where you go like, okay, I'm going to test it. Like, do I like this? Like in my beginnings back then, I started, you know, testing labels. You know, I would label myself as an introvert, for example. I did that for a whole year to see, how do I feel with the label introvert? Do I like it? You know, like, is it something I want to, you know, am I really one? You know, like asking myself that. But I saw it more as a playful thing to, you know, to test myself out. Because what do kids do? They play roles. They do role play all day long. So why aren't we allowed to do that as grown-ups, just to test ourselves, to see like, how do I like being this way? You know?
Yeah, but no, we don't get to do that. It's like you're in school and it's like, well, what are you going to do when you leave school? You know, like you make this one choice forever. I remember that so vividly, and just not being ready to make one.
Exactly.
And yeah, I really believe that we as adults get to play as much as we did as children, if that's what we choose. We need to give ourselves permission for that. And like you say, to try it out, to try on, do I like this color branding? Do I like this in my photographs? Do I like this job? You know, if you're still working for a boss, do I like that job? Not really. I'm going to go look for another one. You know, like it's not like it's that forever. Unless that's what you choose. And if that's what you choose, that is fine too, as long as you've chosen it.
I love that you're mentioning this because this is something that has been so that was a huge part of my life. Like you have to choose one job or what, you know, like one direction you're going. And I've always felt wrong for it because like I did one thing first and I didn't, like I finished it, but I didn't like it. An apprentice job. I liked it. It was okay, and I finished it, but I didn't, it wasn't something that gave me purpose. So in my career at the beginning, I was changing jobs every 2 years, and not just job not just companies. I was changing, literally I was changing jobs because at first I learned gardening, later on I learned travel agency, then I tried studying for 1 semester, then and then I went to work in a hostel, and then until I got to one big corporate job, where I was working as an assistant. And that's when I said, I need to stop. I need to find that's when my journey sort of started, because I needed to find out what's my purpose in my life. I don't feel purpose.
And that's why I love purpose through energy, through numerology, is it's an energetic purpose. This is the energy you bring to your magic in the world. How do you want that to show up? What really do you love doing? What are the skills you have? How do you you get to choose and design it and mold it, It's not like it's prescribed or fatalistic,
Yeah, but one thing that just comes up, especially with your work, because you're I think you're especially working for midlife women. So I think you said 39, right? It starts at 39.
Yes, yeah. And in numerology, because there are so many layers to the energy and so many because energy moves in cycles, as we know. And so there's so many cycles, and they start to really coincide in this different intersection points of those different cycles that happen. Generally, well, they do happen from a mathematical perspective between 39 and 65. I think I shared with you before our interview that, energy exists in a bell curve. And so people will feel that, as you did at 33, coming into that, there's no like right or wrong. And I guess one reason I do use those ages is that I can back them up with the science of numerology. And it takes that, oh, I'm old if I'm in midlife crisis. That you use the term midlife crisis. Now, I have done some, anytime I talk about midlife is not a crisis, it's a privilege. Why is it a privilege? Because you get to choose, because you actually made it. Lots of women in previous generations didn't. And so I view it as a privilege, like we actually get to choose.
There's one thing, and another thing that I'd like to add, because like in my case, when I started, questioning the things in my life, that was a little bit before, that crisis at 33. Back then I didn't have, had tested myself or had created much life, because when I had that first started questioning, finding that purpose in my life, that was when I was, I think, 27. And I feel that it was okay to ask myself that at that age, having that, because the problem was that, because I was getting readings also from different places, and they were similar to you. You have something big that you have to do, that you have to create. You're here to teach, you're here to guide. And for me, it was just too overwhelming. It was too much, responsibility for me at that time. And I feel that if you, like you said, when someone out there is asking themselves at a later stage in life that question, I think you have way more maturity to probably see. My voice is going away from that for that. What's happening, people? um, so you have way more maturity to answer that properly. So this is, I'm saying you have to ask yourself those questions whenever it's needed. But for those of you that are doing it at an older age, it's amazing to do that at that stage because you know yourself. I think you're a lot closer to who you are because you've already gone through so many things that you have already experienced. And for someone doing that at a very young age, not having the space, the safe space to explore yourself is harder to actually get to that point of who you are. It took me very long to get to that point, I feel, because if I look at it from a perspective right now, I would have experienced so much more already to be able to say, okay, this is what I want and this is what I not want. Back then, I really had to, test myself in so many ways to actually find out who I was. So what
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah. And I feel that so having a numerology reading done and knowing a lot of that about yourself when you were younger would have helped us through those times.
Yeah.
It would have, like, I wish that I had known about numerology when I was raising my children, because I can look back and think, oh, I could have dealt with that in a different way for that particular child. It would have been more helpful for them, more helpful for our relationship, all of those kinds of
Yeah.
things. And yet there is still this journey through life where we have to go and try things out, because we are those sponges as children, and then we get to teenage years and we're like trying to push all the walls down around us and be who we are, and of course we don't have the freedom and the capacity to do that. So then our 20s are almost that, and then we almost have to go through some of those things and get some things not always right so that we learn those lessons along the way. Because I feel like the more that we have learned what not to do and who we are not, the more open and ready we are to do what's needed to become who we are, to refine that and actually step into it. And the more of life lessons and journey we have, the more we're able to help others.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Daphne, we're coming to an end. I'd love to talk some more to you, but we don't want to create a too long of a podcast. But I'd like to one last thing maybe about how do people find you? Where can they find your website? All your links, we're going to put them in the show notes under the video and in the show notes of the podcast. But maybe in your own words, like if someone wants to work with you, what do you offer right now? I mean, we read it a little bit in the bio, but with your own words, like what are your programs that you offer right now?
Happy to. So best place to find me is my website, which is my name, daphnewells.com. There is a free gift where you can do that, a toe dip into numerology at giftfromdaphne.com. And if you want to have a chat about working with me, go choose a time at speakwithdaphne.com.
Nice. And how does working with you, it depends on who's the person, right? What their needs are?
It depends on who the person. I do private coaching. I also run intimate circles, which are amazing masterminds for women where there's only a limited number in there so that you get lots of one-on-one time. I also do numerology readings as a separate offering, or they are part of both of those. So there is a variety of ways that people can work with me, and oftentimes, unless you know, oh, I want to have that numerology reading, and you just go and purchase that, and that's fine too. If you want to work with me in a more in-depth way, I like to start with a call if it's someone I've not met before and they've not met me, so we can check that we're energetically aligned.
Nice. I like that
Because,
very much.
I don't want to take a client on and commit to them, because it's as big a commitment for me as it is for the client, right? If we're not energetically aligned, and if we're not, then I can help find someone who is, right? So that's why I like to do it that way.
I love that very much. And that sounds so amazing. Daphne, it was really incredible. Maybe one last word, one last message for our audience today that you want to give them.
I would encourage all listeners to really be courageous enough to follow your own path, to decide what that is and follow it.
I love that. That's a beautiful final words for our listeners today. Thank you so much for being here, for being part of this podcast. And first of all, thank you so much to you, Daphne, for sharing your wisdom. I love your work and I think it's amazing. So if we have anyone out there in your midlife and you'd like to have some support in making that a very magical, creative time in your life, please follow the links in the description. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As always, keep surfing your energy wave. Bye, everybody. Bye, Daphne. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.